Okay, so picture this. You're a manager, and you have to compare the performance of, say, a bunch of different stores or teams or sales offices. It sounds simple, right? But it's a total headache. How on earth do you figure out who's really the best when they all have different budgets, different numbers of people, different everything? Well, today we're going to dive into a really clever method that just slices right through all that complexity. So let's just jump right into a classic problem. You're looking at 5 of your sales offices, and you need to figure out who is genuinely the most efficient, who's really knocking it out of the park. Just take a quick look. Which one would you bet on? All right, here are the raw numbers. Now, the first thing to notice is that they all have the exact same goal, a sales target of 10 lakhs. Easy enough. But now look at their resources, their inputs. Office 3, for instance, has a huge 5 lakh budget, but a tiny team of 7. Then you have Office 2 with a much smaller budget but more people. You can see the problem right away, can't you? It's like comparing apples and oranges. A simple metric just isn't going to cut it here. Now, I know what your first instinct is. Just calculate a simple ratio, right? Like sales per employee. If you do that, Office 3 with its tiny team looks like an absolute rock star. But wait, that completely ignores its massive budget. Okay, so what about sales per dollar? Well, then some other office would probably look better. You see the issue? These simple ratios are really misleading because they only ever tell you a tiny part of the story. All right, so if basic math is failing us, let's try a totally different approach. Let's try to see the problem. This is where we can bring in a really cool and surprisingly intuitive concept called the efficiency frontier. So here's what we're going to do. Since the output, that 10 lakh sales target, is the same for everybody, let's just put it to one side for a second. We're going to focus only on the resources they used, the inputs. We'll just plot each office on a simple graph. Budget goes on the bottom axis, team size goes on the vertical axis. And here is the absolute key to reading this chart. When you're plotting inputs like this, efficiency means using less. It's that simple. So the best performers, the most efficient offices, are going to be the ones closest to that bottom left corner, the ones who hit that same 10 lakh target with the smallest combo of money and people. So when we actually plot our 5 offices, bam, a really clear pattern just pops out. You can see that a few of them, specifically offices 2, 3, and 5, they form this kind of outer boundary. It's like they create an envelope that all the others are inside of. Just by looking, they seem to be the most efficient, because there's no other office that uses both less money and fewer people. They're setting the benchmark. Now, this visual is a fantastic clue, right? I mean, it gives us a really strong hint. But it's not a precise answer. It doesn't tell us how inefficient offices 1 and 4 actually are. Is Office 4 closer to being efficient than Office 1? We can't tell. To get a real score, a hard number, we need to move from a picture to a process. And this brings us to the really clever kind of aha idea behind a method called data envelopment analysis, or DEA. See, instead of some manager forcing one single formula on everyone, DEA completely flips the script. It actually lets each office argue its own best case. So what is this DEA thing exactly? Well, it's a method for calculating relative efficiency. And here's the genius part. It lets each of our sales offices pick for themselves how important the budget is versus how important team size is. They get to pick the weights in a way that makes their own performance look as absolutely strong as it possibly can. It's a fascinating idea. This quote from the source material just nails it perfectly. DEA basically says to each office, or what it calls a decision-making unit, look, you know your own strengths. You make the argument. If you're amazing with a small budget, then give budget a higher weight. If you're great at managing people, emphasize that. Show us the best possible version of yourself. Let's just quickly break down the logic here. It's actually pretty straightforward. 1, we define efficiency as a ratio of weighted outputs over weighted inputs. 2, each office gets to pick its own weights for budget and team size to plug into that formula. And 3, the goal, when it's your turn, is to pick weights that give you the highest possible score. Okay. I know what you're thinking. Hang on a second. If everyone gets to pick their own weights to make themselves look good, won't they all just cheat and give themselves a perfect score? That is an excellent question. And it brings us to the one beautiful, elegant rule that makes this whole system completely fair. And that rule revolves around this number, the highest possible score, the absolute peak of performance. In this system, perfect, 100% relative efficiency equals a score of 1.0. And here it is, the golden rule that makes it all work. When an office chooses its perfect, self-serving weights to make itself look great, those exact same weights get applied to every other office. And under that calculation, no one's score is allowed to be higher than 1.0. Let's make that super concrete. Imagine it's Office 1's turn to be evaluated. It plays with the numbers and finds the absolute best weights for itself. But for those weights to be considered valid, we have to check them against everyone else. So when we apply Office 1's chosen weights to Office 2's data, the score we get has to be 1.0 or less. Same for Office 3, same for Office 4, and so on. It's this constraint that keeps the whole system honest. So, after every single office gets a turn to solve this little puzzle to maximize its own score while playing by the golden rule, we get our final, totally objective results. So let's see what happened. Who are the real winners here? Well, let's start with Sales Office 1. Even with total freedom, with the ability to choose the most flattering weights possible to present its most favorable case, the absolute highest score it could get was 0.79. It simply couldn't find a single fair weighting system where it came out on top. But now contrast that with Sales Office 2. When it was its turn, it was able to find a set of weights that gave it a perfect 1.0 score while also keeping everybody else's score at or below 1.0. It mathematically proved that it's a truly efficient performer in this specific group. And here's the final verdict. All the data in one place. You can see it clear as day. Offices 2, 3, and 5 all managed to achieve that perfect 1.0 score. They are our efficient units. But offices 1 and 4, even after making their best possible argument, were flagged as inefficient, scoring 0.79 and 0.84. And this is where it all comes full circle. Remember our visual guess from the very beginning? That efficiency frontier we drew? The offices that formed that outer envelope were, you guessed it, 2, 3, and 5. The rigorous math of DEA just confirmed what our eyes were suspecting all along. They really are the true benchmarks for performance. And you know, this is the real power of DEA. We don't just get a simple ranking, we get a target. For the inefficient offices, like 1 and 4, the question is no longer, are we good or bad? Now the question is, how can we become more like the offices on the frontier? DEA doesn't just identify the best, it gives everyone else a clear mathematical roadmap for how to get there.